Welcome everyone to Photoshop Essentials, mastering the basics of Photoshop. My name is Ambry, the digital design guru, and today we're going to be diving into Module 2, understanding layers. Before we get started, just really quickly, I just want to kind of take a moment because I don't think I did this in Module 1, but if you haven't already done so, exploring your dashboard. This is your member portal. So everything is pretty much in order. So if you click on it, and let's actually go back to the beginning. Go back to the beginning. And I have an account. So you're going to log in. Password. Okay, so you're gonna log in, and this will be where all of your products and your courses are, anything that you've purchased from me, from the Digital Design Guru. Of course, we're in Introduction to Photoshop Essentials right here, and you'll see like the expiration date as well. I'm actually extending this particular course for a year. So you have access to this course for a year and it's free. The reason why I want it to be free is because I just wanted you guys just to understand the value of this. So, you can have that foundation. So it's free, super, super free, just to kind of get this knowledge. And so you'll click on it, and then here is all of your course information. So you have your introduction section has a little bit about me, welcome video, module 1. Day 1 is here. You have your like key concept, live lesson. I'll always give you guys a design challenge to practice with. We're in module day 2. So we're working with layers and layer styles. So if you click on that and click on key concepts and principles, my computer's running a little slow. I kind of made a little infographic for you guys, just like a reference tool, since we're going to be talking about layers and understanding layers. Just a reference so you can refer to, and it just kind of like highlights some key components of the layers panel, which we're going to be exploring today, and some shortcut keys that you can use as well to kind of streamline and help you work a little bit more efficiently. Of course, your live lesson, I'll always try to drop that link in there. And you'll just click live and you'll join. You have the information to the Google Meets here too. And then in the lesson, I'm going to be using some files to kind of practice and demonstrate how to use layers. If you click on download files here are those files that you can use to practice on. And you can download these onto your computer as well if you want to follow along. And then, of course, we're going to dive into the assignment, which we'll talk about towards the end. Okay. If you have any questions anytime during the lesson or lecture, just drop your questions in the chat just so we can kind of keep things going, and we can keep this between 30 to 45 minutes. Drop those questions in the chat, and we'll have a little period towards the end where I'll answer some questions, kind of go over some things too towards the end. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started with the lesson. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this screen. I'm working in Photoshop here. And so here's that lesson title, Understanding Layers in Photoshop. So the objective for this lesson is for you to be able to have a comprehensive understanding of layers in Adobe Photoshop and their significance in graphic design and some practical applications of different layer functions. So you're gonna learn the basics of layers today. Okay, so our agenda, I already did our introduction. Remember, I want to try to keep this between 30 to 45 minutes. I'll go ahead and dive into a little lecture follow along. We'll do a little practice activity together. So basically, I'll do that lecture, and then you guys can kind of start practicing a little bit with what we were doing during the lecture. So if you kind of missed some things while I was kind of demonstrating, that practice activity will be that time to kind of practice and ask those questions. I'll be popping in to give some help and support. And then we'll have a reflection and question and answer section again, where you can ask some questions. The questions that you dropped in the chat. We'll reflect about what we did, what we learned about, and then we'll wrap it up with concluding snapshot and what we're going to be talking about in module 3. All right. All right, so those lecture points, I'm going to first start off talking about introduction to Photoshop layers, what are layers, explain why they're important, and just kind of show you guys some real world significance in regards to layers. I'm going to show you how to create, how to organize, and managing your layers. We're going to do some layer blending modes, opacities, mess with the opacities a little bit, and then layer mask. So we're going to be pretty much doing some heavy stuff today. And I'm excited. I'm excited because I really love teaching about layers. Layers, there's so much that you can do with layers, and really understanding the basics of layers, that layers panel is really going to kind of take your work to the next level and enable you to recreate whatever it is that you envision. So I'm excited about layers. Layers are actually something that you see commonly in a lot of design software. So really understanding this is going to be key. All right, so I'll stop talking. Let's go ahead and dive in. I'm gonna first go ahead and pull up that infographic that I made in regards to the layers panel. If you want to pull that up as well, we can take a look at it together. And so if you kind of take a look, layers, they're basically the fundamentals of organizing and manipulating different parts of your digital artwork. So they're basically like layering in different pieces. So actually, I'll actually show you a demonstration. This is something that I created, and I'm gonna pull up my layers panel. Your layers panel, the little icon looks like this: two sheets of paper stacked on top of each other. If you cannot find this, if you go to Windows, scroll down to layers, it's right there. Or you can use your shortcut key, which I give you guys a little central shortcut key down here. You can click on F7 to pull up that layers panel. But here's my layers panel, and I have a whole lot going on in here. So basically, each element is going to be stacked on top of each other. That's why they do that icon in the way that it does. It's everything stacked on. They're stacked on top. So think about it as like transparent sheets of paper. That's how I used to like to explain it to my students. So say I have two sheets of paper, and they're clear. This is my first sheet of paper. If I take another one and I stack it on top, 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 right? If your paper has color on it, if it has something on it, you're not going to see what's at the bottom, right? But if it's clear, if it's a transparent, you can see what's at the bottom. So understanding that concept is going to help you organize your layers and kind of eliminate any type of frustration. And I know it kind of doesn't make sense just yet. Once I kind of explain it a little bit further and we look at some real world examples as well, you'll kind of understand a little bit more of what that means. And so if we take a look at my layers panel here, I'm going to pop this out. Notice that in this infographic that I created, I have a whole lot going on. I have text, I have an image here, I got a little icon right here. I even got some shapes that I layered in there. And so let's take a look at my layers panel. All the way at the bottom is going to be your very first layer. So this is the first thing that I've layered in. Now I'm going to go ahead and hide everything so we can kind of understand what I'm talking about. So this was my very first layer, and this little I button right here, that's to hide things. So if you hover over it, tell you this makes things visible and not visible, and I just hit it. So my background is white. So this is my background. It's a white blank sheet of paper, right? If I were to hide this as well, you'll see these little checker mark. That means that it's transparent. It's not there. It's non-existent. There's nothing there. So if I were to put just this image on here and I were to go to print it, only thing that will be printed is the image, not this background, because it's clear it's not there. So anyways, so this is my first layer, is that background. The next thing that I layered in, the next thing that I did was I applied this color. So this is the next thing on top. So notice that you cannot see this white background anymore because this is layered on top, right? So the next thing that I layered in is this image. So this is on top of the white, which is on top of the purple. And then the next thing I layered in was this text, this shape down at the bottom. I layered in another shape, some text, and more things. So notice that everything is in order and it's stacked on top of each other, right? So if I were to say, for instance, I have this text and I have this shape underneath. If I were to take this shape, and I think this is it right here, and I were to click, this is my layer for my rectangle shape that I have selected. And if I were to click it and move it above my text here, notice that I can't see my text because it's layered on top. So that purple color, which is in a clear transparent color, is on top and it's covering that. So remember, and I'm gonna go back. So remember, layers are stacked on top of each other and your layers work from bottom to top. So from bottom to top. So if you're working on something and you're like, I can't see where this is, I see that the layer is there, but I don't see it on my screen. I don't see it on the canvas. 9 times out of 10, it's the way your layers are organized. So I kind of hope that helps you understand layers a little bit and why they're so important. So next thing I want to do is I want to kind of take a moment, and I have my infographic here. It's kind of just demonstrate or explain some key components of your layers panel. So some very essential key components, and there is a whole lot. If you kind of look at my infographic, I mean, there is a whole lot of components to it. I have a whole lot of things arrowed to it. So we're not going to talk about all of them, but I'm just going to talk to you about a few of them just to get you started. So one of the main essential components of the layers panel is to be able to create a new layer. So if you go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to drag this up so we can kind of look at it. All the way at the bottom, this little bar right here, you have different functions. And if you see this little plus sign here, if you hover over it, this is how you're going to create a new layer. Let's go ahead and click that. And I have a new layer that just added to the top. Now your layers, it kind of goes into chronological order. So Adobe automatically like numbers them. So you see like layer 2, layer 3, it's all numbered. So it's gonna go automatically to the top. And I have nothing on that layer. It's just a blank layer. I have no images, no text, no shape, no nothing. So it's just empty. And you can kind of see it as well. If you look really, really closely, you can kind of see what's on that layer. Now, later on, we're going to talk about managing those layers, which is going to be vital. So we'll double back to that. But going back, this is how you create that new layer. So if you wanted to erase or delete that layer, you can click on the little trash can here, delete layer, or you can click on the delete button on your keyboard. So you just have to make sure that you have that layer that you want deleted. It's highlighted. So you see here, it's a light gray. I have it highlighted. I'm going to click delete on my keyboard, or I can click delete here. And delete is going to ask you before you do it, and it's gone. Okay. Some other little cool functions to kind of get you organized is creating a new group. So you can click on this, and basically you can group all of your layers into different groups. So say I wanted to make a folder for text. So I can double click here, type in text. So this is my folder for text. And I can click all of my text layers. So I'm going to click here. If I want to select multiple ones at the same time, I'm going to hit shift on my computer. If you have a Mac, it's command. Boop. All right, come on, computer. Doesn't want me to be great today, guys. All right, and I can drag, and actually, let me keep everything in order. Drag all of my text into that folder there. Now I know that it's in the folder. If I were to click this little arrow right here, they disappear. And this one's actually not in there, so I need to put it in there. All right. So let's do a double check. All right. So there we go. So I know it's in the folder because I clicked the little arrow. Notice that they're gone. That's all of my text, right? I can do the same thing if I wanted to do another one. So I'm gonna click on that folder again. And this one I'm actually gonna put down here because I'm gonna make one for, we'll call this shapes. I'll put all my shapes in here. All right, so let's find my shape. So here's one shape. I'm gonna go ahead and click and drag, drop it in here. And here's another shape. I'm gonna go ahead and click it and drop it in the folder. So basically just hovering over it until you see that blue line adds everything into that folder, and then minimize it. All right. So I created a folder for text and a folder for shape. This just kind of keeps everything in order. And it looks like I have another one here. I'm gonna go ahead and add this one as well into my text. So I got everything all organized. Yep, looks good, looks good. All right, so that's just a little quickie on some important key essential functions in the layers panel. So being able to delete, add a new layer, a folder, and then of course, you can organize it by clicking and dropping. All right. So let's take a moment and pause. We're gonna check in to see if. So the next thing I want to talk about is being able to rearrange your layers and naming them. So I just want to kind of highlight that, and I know I kind of just grazed over it a little bit, but I just want to show you again really quickly. So remember to name your layers, which I think is really important to get into the habit of naming your layers, because you'll find yourself working on a project and you have like a ton of layers and you're trying to find something in particular. It's going to stress you out. So just real quick, and sometimes I forget as well, just go back, and if you click on the name, so double click, like a quick double click, tick, tick, wait till the text highlights blue. It allows you to type so you can name that layer. So if I want to do it here, I'm gonna name this layers panel image. And this, see, I don't even know what this is. It's that. So I know that it's that because if I click on it, it's telling me the transform commands pop up. But just by looking at the layers panel here, I can't really see. So I should have named this. So I'm gonna just PS icon. And there was one more I seen. Okay. And I'm gonna name this one DGG logo. So just double clicking it real quick allows you to kind of give that layer a name. So say I want to rearrange things. So remember to rearrange, you just click and you can drag it to wherever you want. You can click on multiple ones at the same time. Remember, by holding shift allows you to rearrange those layers. All right, so let's just do a recap. So we've rearranged layers, we've named them, we've hid them using the little eyes here by hiding our layers. We've deleted, we've added new ones, and we created them in the folder. Some other key things that I want you guys to kind of remember that I think is essential is being able to lock your layers. So basically, when you lock your layer, which the icon is right here, it's a little lock. It looks like a lock. It allows you to not do any edits on there. So why would I want to do that? Okay, so you're working on something and something just keeps moving. You want it to stay right there. I'm working on this text right here, but the shape in the background keeps moving. I keep accidentally selecting it. Might be a good idea to lock your layers. So to lock your layers, all you do is you click on the layer that you want to lock. So I want to lock this image here, and I go over here and I've locked it. And I know it's locked because it has a little lock right here. All right, do it again and lock. Do it one more time and lock. So I blocked all my layers. So by locking that, I can't even click. I can't even move it. I can't resize it. I can't do anything because it's locked. I can't do any type of edits to it. So that's a good little thing to kind of be aware of as well. Okay. In your layers panel, if you click on this three little slots, these are some additional functions too. to the functions that are already visible in the layers panel. So for instance, new layer, you can do that there as well. Lock layer, you can do that as well here. So these are kind of like your more options, or yeah, your more options or your settings for your layers panel is going to be located right here. All right, so I hope I haven't lost you guys just yet. I just wanted to kind of go over those key things really quickly. The next thing that I want to talk about is your the concepts of blend modes, and let's put this back. Is the concept of something called blend modes and adding effects to your layers. So actually, I'm going to use one of these. I'm gonna use my little icon here, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. We're gonna work on just this one, and I'm gonna hide everything else, just so we can focus on just that. All right, so let's do that. So let's hide everything else, and we're gonna focus just on my little icon here. We're gonna do some work to it. Come on, computer. There we go. Make it big. I'm okay with that size. That's good. All right. So the next concept, again, is layer styles and adding layer effects and blend modes. So layer effects are just different effects that you can do to a specific layer, whether it's adding like a color on top, if you want to add like a gradient on top, if you wanted to do like a drop shadow, or I don't know, add a pattern to it. You can do like multiple things. Now that layer style icon is going to be located at the bottom. So here's your layer style right here. And if you forget, you can always hover over it, remember, and it'll tell you. So add layer style. I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. And it tells me, it gives me like a little drop down. We're gonna click on blending options up top. And by clicking on blending options, instead of just selecting them, just kind of allows me to see everything. So it's still the same settings, it's just everything that's visible. I have the entire window. Okay, so put that to the side. We can still see what we're doing. So layer style. You want to kind of bump up your work, take it to the next level. There are multiple layer styles that Photoshop offers you that you can apply to your layers. So right now, again, I have my logo here. One of the layer styles that I like to use a lot is a bevel and emboss. So let's go ahead and click on that. And notice that it kind of made it like a 3D pop, like a 3D type of popping. And actually, let's move this down so we can really see it. Sorry, guys. There we go. So add that bevel. So there we go. So it kind of made it like pop out a little bit. Now, here are different settings for that layer style that you selected. You can adjust it and kind of customize it. Um, you just kind of got to play with it to kind of get the effect that you want. You can adjust the opacity. So opacity meaning how see-through or clear or transparent you want something to be. You can adjust with the blends as well if you want to kind of play with these and see what happens. I mean, you can do a lot of things like if you wanted to blend. So blend modes, which we're going to talk about, is basically when you blend colors. So there are different types of blend modes. Here are all your blend modes. And basically it's just blending the color that's behind, so that purple, with the color of the layer. So my layer, my icon here is black, and it's just blending based on my selection, that back and that front. So you can do different blends to kind of give yourself a different type of effect. I kind of like that one. And you don't have to necessarily click them. By just hovering over it, like I'm not clicking at all, I'm just dragging my mouse, allows me to see like what each one does. I kind of like that overlay. I kind of like this one. I'm gonna go ahead and click that. And I can adjust that opacity if I want. See how it makes it a little bit more translucent. Okay. You can adjust the contour. So if I want it to be contoured, you can add some texture if you want to add some texture, if you wanted to. If you want to add a stroke, stroke just means like your outline. So that's a keyword actually. Stroke is outline. So that's the outline of something. So if you want to add a stroke, oh, come on, computer, stop doing that. Sorry, y'all, my computer is just doing a lot. You can add a stroke, and then you can adjust the size of your stroke if you want to be thick or not thick. You can type in the number if you have a certain size that you want. Sorry, go back, go back, go back. You can change the color of your stroke if you wanted it to be a different color. Whatever you want to do. I mean, Photoshop really allows you to customize whatever you wanted to customize. So that's why I really, really like it. You can play with the opacity, blend modes. There's a lot of things that you can do. I'm just gonna click on some of these layer styles just so you can see. Inner shadow, if you wanted to add inner shadow, the inner glow, a color overlay. This is one that I use quite often. Um, if I have my logo is black and I usually add my logo to like different things, like whether it's an ad or something I'm working on. Sometimes black doesn't work on maybe a project that I'm working on. Maybe I need it to be white. I'll come and do a color overlay white and change it white. That's something that I use quite often. If you want to do a gradient, if you want to add a pattern, if you want to add an outer glow, a drop shadow, I mean, there's so much that you can do. I definitely recommend taking some time to explore these and play with these for sure, just so you can kind of get an understanding. I'm going to uncheck all of these because it's a lot going on with my logo right now. I'm going to uncheck all of them and hit OK. So here we go. So that's your layer style. So remember, layer styles are here. You want to make sure you have your layer selected to add that layer style. Now, I know I've kind of touched on blend modes. There are different ways that you can add blend modes as well. So you can add blend modes that way, or you can go here and you can add a blend mode as well. So this time I'm actually going to add a blend mode to something else. Let's add a blend mode to this shape here. So I'm gonna select my shape here and I'm gonna add a blend mode. So here we got darken, multiply, and again it's just letting me blend what's in front to the back. Just hovering over them so you can kind of see the different blend modes. Different blend modes, different blend modes, different blend modes. Okay, so that's your blend modes. I actually really like this one, so I'm gonna click on that one. Alrighty, so I'm gonna go ahead and zoom out. Remember to zoom out of your canvas is control minus. It allows you to zoom out. Alrighty, so let's bring everything back visible again. Bring everything back visible again. And I want to select my logo here. I want to resize it and make it small again. Move it around. Move it around. That looks good. Hit the check mark. There we go. So here we are. So we just added some blend modes. We played with the layer style effect. So layer style we added to the logo here. Blend modes we added to the little shape here. Notice it just kind of pops your work a little bit and adds a little bit of something extra to your design. And I even added some blend modes to my text here and to this icon. I had like a little drop shadow. Again, it just kind of adds like an extra little effect. So yeah, I just want to like pause for a little second and give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and I'll answer them accordingly. Just a few minutes, real quick, before we move on to layer mask, which is another biggie in regards to layers. So moving on, we're gonna drop into layer mask, but there's one more. I'm sorry, I forgot to kind of really focus on before we move on to layer mask is opacity. And I kind of mentioned it earlier. Opacity is just basically being able to adjust how clear or transparent something is. So if you want to adjust like the opacity of a particular layer, you can do that by just clicking it. Say I wanted to adjust the opacity of, I don't know, let's say my icon here. Let me unlock it. So I want it to be a little bit translucent, right? If I go to opacity, I can toggle it right here. You can also adjust it by fill. Computer's moving a little slow. So these are some ways that you can kind of mess with that opacity a little bit. So make sure you have it selected, and then you adjust the opacity accordingly. And again, you can always type things into that helps as well. So I think I kind of touched on everything. We touched on pretty much everything down here with the exception of this icon and this one. Yeah, let's dive into layer mask. So layer mask. Layer masks are really, really tricky. And it can be a little confusing. So basically, layer mask is a concept or ability that allows you to hide different components of a layer without erasing it. Now, why would you want to do that? We call that non-destructive editing. Sometimes when you're working on something and you don't want it, you might be tempted to use the eraser. So here, I'm just going to snag my eraser here and make my eraser bigger. And I might just want to do that, right? Now, here's the thing when you use something like the eraser. You decide later on, oh, I didn't want to do that. Actually, I liked it the way that it was. The only way to get it back is either to go through your history. So going to Windows, history, or hitting undo, 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 undo until you get back what you wanted. No one has time for that. It's just too much. That's why we're going to do a layer mask, which is non-destructive editing. So by erasing it, destroys the image, it destroys the asset, it destroys that particular piece of that image. The only way to get it back is history or undo. We don't want to do that. We want to do non-destructive editing. We don't want to destroy it. We want to apply a non-destructive feature. So a layer mask is something that we call a non-destructive edit. So I'm going to bring that back. And we're going to start adding a layer mask. So I'm going to actually work on my logo again here. And I'm going to hide everything. Actually, let's not do the logo. Let's do the layers, that little image of the layers panel. Let's do that. All right. Where's that text? Hide that. Okay. Alrighty. And I want the layers panel, which I know I locked. I need to unlock that. Here we are. Alrighty. So I'm about to add what we call a layer mask. And I'm going to hide all of the text that I have visible here. So layer mask is a mask. Think of it like a mask. You're hiding something. You're hidden. So I'm going to do that. So to do that, I'm going to click on my layer here. Okay. And I know we haven't talked about them yet, but you want to use a selection tool, which we're going to talk about later on in the course. So your selection tools, there are a few different ones that you can use. I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to use this rectangle marquee tool here, which is a type of selection tool. Okay. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to draw a box around my image. Now, here's the thing about selection tools. The way selection tools work is you're selecting a piece of your work, whatever it is that you're selecting, whether it's a piece in a layer or basically a piece in a layer. So I'm selecting a piece within my layer. I'm going to do edits to whatever in that selection. So what's inside of my selection is this layers panel. And your selection, you know you have it selected because you have these dancing ants. Okay, if you want to get rid of the dancing ants, Control D. Okay, but I don't want to do that right now. So I have my selection and I'm going to add a layer mask. Okay, so I'm going to hide. All right, you ready? So layer mask, select it, selection tool, this little icon right here next to my layer style. We call that a layer mask. We're going to click on that. It's hidden. Notice that when I clicked on that layer mask, it added this extra little box next to that layer. The box has black all around it, right? That's the layer mask. Let's see, we have somebody joining us. Hi, ma'am. I'm good. We actually talking about layer masks right now. How to jump into layer mask. So actually we'll go back to that to kind of get you caught up. So I'm gonna undo, and I'm gonna undo. So we're talking about layer masks. And we've kind of touched on layers. Layers are different pieces that you layer into your document. And so I have multiple layers here. I have my text layers, my different shape layers, my icon layer. I got different layers. So with a layer mask, it allows you to edit the layer without deleting it. So without erasing. So if I were to take my eraser and I were to do this, it's gone. I deleted it. Now, what if later on you decide that you want to still keep that? Oh, I like that. I still want to keep that in my image. The only way to get that back is to undo or go on your history. We don't want to do that. That takes too much time. So we want to apply what we call a layer mask, which allows us just to mask or hide whatever it is that we want to hide. So to do that, you want to use one of your selection tools. And I know we haven't talked about selection tools yet, but we'll get into that later. I'm going to use this selection tool in particular, which is my marquee tool. And I'm just going to select my little box here. So I got my layers panel image. I'm going to select that. And with this selected, it's going to allow me to apply a layer mask. Now in your layers panel here, down at the bottom next to your layer style, you have your layer mask. And if you hover over it, it tells you exactly what it is. So I'm going to apply that layer mask. Boom. So notice that it hid everything that I didn't want to show. So I didn't want my text shown, I hid it. Now, if you look over to your layers panel, it added an extra little box right here. That's that extra layer mask. So if you kind of look a little closely, it has like a black little box. So what we call that is your layer mask. So whatever is in black is hidden, whatever is in white is revealed. So let's take a look real quick. I'm gonna get my paintbrush. I'm gonna change my paintbrush to black. And I'll remember, I want to make sure I have that layer mask selected. If I were to take my black paintbrush on top of that layer mask, I can hide that piece. Okay, but I want to bring it back. Too easy. If I switch back to white, it allows me to bring back what I hid. And as I'm doing this, I want you to kind of take a look at that layer mask icon right there. Notice that it's bringing back everything that I want hidden of your layer mask. And we're going to talk a little bit more about layer masks, but let's just do a little quick little activity so you can kind of get an idea of how this works. Okay. So we're going to pause and I want you guys to go back to your course module and we're going to download those files. So we're going to download those files. All right, so we're going to go to our course module. And in your course module, I actually gave you guys some files that you can use to practice with layer masks. So remember I showed you at the beginning all those different components within your module. So you have that key concept principle that we just worked on in Photoshop that you can refer to that has those different pieces that we talked about. So layer style, how to add a new layer, all those different pieces. And then in your assignment, you have your assignment. And then in your live lesson, there's some files I want you guys to go ahead and download. So there is 4 files, and we're gonna practice with those. So I'm gonna actually open those up in Photoshop, and we can do it together. I'll give y'all a little second to do it. If you need a little moment, if you need to catch up, we'll pause for a sec. And we're gonna download those files to our computer. Again, I already had it downloaded, so I'm just gonna open them up automatically. All right, so I'm gonna go to my folder. And the first one I want you to open up, you can open up any one that you want, but I'm gonna do the swimmer file. So I'm gonna open that up, and I can click and drag it into Photoshop. And it's gonna open up a new layer for me. All right. So here I have my image. I'm gonna open up that layers panel. Remember, F7 allows you to open up your layers panel. And notice that I just have that one lonely layer in there. Remember, we want to get into the habit of labeling our layers. So remember, if we double click layer 1, I'm gonna name them swimmer, name them whatever you like. There's my layer. And I want to layer in the rest of my image. So let's layer in something else. So I'm gonna go to file, and instead of just opening, this time I'm gonna place embedded. You can also copy paste too. So if you want to copy and paste them into your document, you can do that too. I'm gonna do file and place embedded. And I'm going to layer in, let's do the fish. I'm gonna layer in this fish real quick. All right, there's my fish. So notice my layers, I got 2 layers now. So I have my first layer, which is that swimmer, is all the way to the bottom. My second one, which is the fish, is all the way to the top. I'm gonna hit the check mark. Now we're gonna use practice with that layer mask, just so you guys can really see how those layer masks work, to basically blend this little fish in with the other one. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to click on my fish layer here. I'm gonna grab on a selection tool. I like to use the object selection tool. So if you go to the 3 little dots at the bottom in your tools panel and look for object selection, there we go. It's gonna be a little plus sign. You wanna take it and basically draw a box around whatever it is that you're trying to select. So I'm gonna draw a box around my little fish here. So here's my little fish. I'm gonna draw a box around him. I got my dancing ants. And the object selection tool does take a little bit of time, because the computer is basically reading the lines. It's reading kind of the edges. So it might take your computer a little bit of minute. Just be patient with it. All right, so it looks like we got it. So it took a little bit of time. Like I said, that object selection does take some time to kind of run. And basically, I just drew the box around the little fish. And if you notice, that it's perfectly selected that fish. And that's why I like it, because it's usually really, really good if the lines are really, really clear with selecting whatever it is that you're trying to select. And it did. And I know that it did, because if you notice, it has those little, I call them dancing ants around my fish. Now I want to add that layer mask. So remember, I want to make sure I have my layer selected, which is the fish. I'm going to go down all the way to the bottom, look for my layer mask icon, click it, and there we are. So I added that layer mask. So I just basically created a whole new image. I got a little fish here. We can make him a giant fish if we want. And he's swimming with old boy in the water. So I didn't have to erase anything. I didn't have to sit there and erase the entire background. I was able to take one piece of an image and add it to another piece of an image. And that's what I really like about Photoshop. And that's what I really like about layers. It allows you to really combine different pieces together. Let's practice and layer in one more piece, just so you guys can understand how to do it. I'm gonna go to File, Place Embedded, and this time I'm gonna layer in, let's do another shark. I'm gonna layer in this one. I'm gonna place the file in here. It pops on top, so it's covering everything that's underneath, because layers read from bottom to top. All right, and I wanna select my little shark guy here. So I'm gonna zoom in. So remember, to zoom in is Control++. I'm gonna zoom in and get my object selection tool. I'm gonna draw a box around this little shark here. Let the computer read it. Take its time, read those lines. There it goes. So it perfectly selected my shark. I'm gonna add that layer mask here. Boom. And I just got me a shark that I just added in the water with my image. So basically I'm just kind of manipulating and combining those different pieces into my work. We're gonna do it one more time. I think you guys kind of get the gist of it. I'm gonna do file, place embedded, and this time I'm gonna layer in that last one, which is the big shark. I'm gonna place it in here. All right. So we're gonna just put him right there. And my object selection tool to select them. Let the computer do its thing. Reading the lines. And depending on the image, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, I guess. All right, and I'm gonna add that layer mask. So I'm gonna go to the bottom, layer mask, boom. There's my little fish. There's my shark. He's just chilling in the back. So we just did layer masks. So just to recap, we talked about layer styles. We talked about how to add a new layer, how to delete a layer. We talked about hiding those layers, rearranging, naming those layers, and then we kind of recapped and topped it off with layer masks. And so you can kind of continue to play with this image here if you wanted to add some layer styles or layer effects to it. Remember, I showed you blend modes. If you wanted to add like a different blend mode to it, maybe, I don't know, I want to add like, let's see, a darken blend mode. We can do that. You can do a linear blend mode if you want to change the color. You could do a soft blend mode if you wanted to change that. If you wanted to add, remember we talked about drop shadow effects. If you wanted to add like a little bevel to your shark, you can do that as well. If you want to kind of give it like a 3D effect, there's so much stuff that you can do. And so if you remember the way this image kind of started, it was just this one lonely guy swimming in the water. We just layered in two sharks and a fish and created a whole new image. So super, super cool stuff. Love, love, love Photoshop. All right, so let's kind of wrap it up. And I'm going to close this up. And kind of wrap up the lesson. Alrighty, so we talked about those layers, and remember our objective was to be able to understand layers in Photoshop, their significance behind it, why they're important, and some different features and different functions that you can do with layers in Photoshop. And we talked about a few of them. We talked about, of course, intro to it. We talked about creating, organizing, managing, doing those blend modes, opacities, adding different styles, layer masks, and we kind of did a little practice activity where we layered in a few different things into one big image and we created a whole new image. So we did a lot. So for your assignment, again, make sure you take some time to really explore a little bit. If you missed a little bit of the lecture, that's okay. I've recorded it. So I'll pop it in just a little bit so you can kind of recap. Use that infographic that I provided in the course as a reference to find different components of that layers panel. And that'll definitely help you with your design challenge for this module. So again, you're creating a collage while you're layering in different pieces of an image. And you don't have to do a layer mask if you don't want to. I want you to practice with it, but it's not required. I just want you to kind of get comfortable with layering in those different pieces. So our next module, we're going to be talking about some basic editing techniques. And so this is going to be something good for if you are into photography or if you take different images for your business and you want to kind of do some edits to those images. This will be the lesson for you. So we're going to talk about some tools like the healing brush tool, how to fix different pieces in your images to repair them. Talk about the basics. So it's going to be some good stuff. All right. So thanks for joining me. If you have any questions, of course, like always, feel free to message me. And any feedback that you have, please let me know so I can continue to make the course better, add whatever needs to be added so you guys can really get the gist of understanding Photoshop. All right, so next time, I'll see you guys soon.